thing about this is that we kind of take it beyond just design and accessibility, and also talk about content and about engineering. All the teams together came together in this project, and I think that's pretty cool. I've been doing accessibility for 14 years, I guess, and when I first started, often the people who were building things that they were asking me to look at to make accessible didn't even include design at all. They just had, somebody wanted to add something to a web application, and so they went to the devs and asked them to build it. And I was asked to review it, and I would like kind of shrug and be like, honestly, I don't even know what you're supposed to be doing with this. This is just ugly, and it's just confusing, and it's kind of like universally inaccessible, and that nobody can use your site. And so what you really need is designers. And so it's really cool to have watched as accessibility has evolved and we've grown as an industry over the last 14 years, that we're now looking at like all of the different parties that are involved, and how do we bring everybody to the table to actually make sure that accessibility is included. And then guess what? It actually is more usable to everybody. So I wanted to pass it over to the team and let them kind of talk about what we've been doing at Visa on that front.
Yeah. KB's up first.
Hey y'all, can y'all hear me through the mask? Everyone? Great, fantastic. Yeah, we're going to talk about building bridges, specifically how our design system connected accessibility design, content and engineering, and it has not become a hindrance. It has become a force multiplier for our team. So first, we are from Visa, so I got to read you a disclaimer. These materials and best practice recommendations are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for marketing, legal, regulatory, or other advice. You should independently evaluate all content recommendations in light of your specific business needs, operations, and policies, as well as any applicable laws and regulations. Visa is not responsible for your use of the marketing materials, best practice recommendations, or other information, including errors of any kind or conclusions may draw from their use. You should consult with your own legal department when creating your own materials to determine if any legal disclosures, changes, or regulations may be required under applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations and your own institution's policies. Images and use cases are for illustrative purposes only. Program providers are responsible for their programs and compliance with any applicable laws and regulations. I tried to do my best like cattle auctioneer. All right, so a little rundown of what we'll talk about today. A little introduction of who we are and what is a design system. And then we'll dive into our journey, which is 3 parts to it: the gap we faced, the foundation we laid, and building the span. And then 3 is opening the bridge. It was how we worked, lessons we learned so you don't have to. And then as we talked about, well, you can, if you have a question throughout, you can ask it, but we'll also have some time at the end to talk about Q&A. Okay, who we are. So we'll take this time to introduce everybody. Our team is about 4-ish designers, 10 engineers, 2 content designers, research, 2 accessibility managers, design ops and strategy. My name is Kristen Bonnet, or KB, everyone calls me. I'm a senior staff designer at Visa. I've been at Visa for, I think, 7 years now. I've been on the design system for maybe about 4. I love design systems. I think we have the best users, and it's designers, engineers, accessibility managers. And I'm happy to be part of this team and happy to be talking to you about the great work we do. I'm going to pass it off first to Brandy.
Hello, I'm Brandy Dudenhofer. I am the lead content designer on the Visa product design system. I've been with Visa for almost 3 years and pretty much have been on the design system since I started. I do moonlight on a few other teams every once in a while, but I love the design system as well, and we'll probably be there for a really long time with all of you guys. So I'll pass off to Srini next.
Hello everyone, my name is Imran. I am the Accessibility Senior Manager at Visa. I've been with Visa for over 7 years now, but I've been in the field of accessibility for over 12 years, a little set. I'm leading the design system for accessibility effort. As you can see, we have 2 team members on the design system. One of my team members is actually sitting in the audience today, Daivu. And here, of course, all engineering team is also part of engineering teams are also sitting over here. Welcome them. So that's pretty much it about me. I'll pass it over to Srini.
Thank you, Imran. My name is Srini, folks, and I lead the program on the technology side overall with my partner Alicia, who's not here. She leads the design, content, research side. I'm the director of design engineering. It's been a very fortunate journey so far. I think I was planning to be at Visa only for a couple years. Came from a startup, and the system program happened. So it's been very sticky for me personally. And the journey from like, Genesis to like going public and becoming open source has been like very fortunate. And we're here because of the team. And there are 4 folks here in the audience. We have like 3 engineers over there, and then we have our accessibility folks, and we have some legends here who've been on the program, and at Visa. So where we are today is a confluence of how we work together. That's been the secret sauce, and we'll unpack that more and beyond the assets and stuff. So, and how we've gotten here. That's a perfect segue. Thank you, KB. So, what's a design system, right? So, imagine. There's so many analogies. I'll just pick one, maybe 2. One is Lego building blocks, right? So you get these fundamental pieces, but and you can build any kind of universe with it, right? You can build a Marvel universe, you can build a Star Wars universe. You just want to keep it simple, like Lego Technique. You can do that too. So what that means, it's approachable, it's modular. You can compose anything together. And it's well guided. And if you've seen any of the Lego packages, they have those step-by-step famous instructions, right? Those are our guidelines. And the actual pieces themselves are the assets, right? Like you have like those design guidelines, you have like content guidelines, you also have freeform, right? But then you have that framework and those guardrails, and the system provides that, right? Some people think about system as a product or a platform. We're just going to call it a system, right? It gives you that overall framework. There's just so many ways to tell the story. And the anatomy of the system, like the tangible assets are design, code, and guidelines across accessibility, content, and engineering, and code assets. But that's only one side of the coin. The other side is, how do you make that usable for folks who are using it, who are primarily our developers and designers, right? And the community support, like how you approach them, ensuring their success. Like I remember in the very early days, we influenced, I know one developer at a time, like influencing it, kind of getting that formula right, getting the momentum, like winning our hearts and minds, and and then eventually kind of scaling it up, right? Fast forward now, before we went public, we were on our Teams channel. We don't have Slack, we have Teams. On our channel, we have like 1,500 folks plus. GDL is pretty much similar. And we have like weekly office hours over, every week for 3 regions, NA, European Union, UK, and then Asia Pacific. And empowering the team to the community support. And it's a human business everywhere. So we kind of think about that first and then product second. So what is a component, right? Components are like one of the fundamental building blocks in the Lego analogy, right? You get that starter pack of those building blocks, and those are our components, and you can build anything higher order with it. So be it a small house, be it a car, you can do that. But what's a component? One of our engineers who's not here, Nicole, she famously said, everything is a button, right? And that's true. It's partly true, and it's mostly true, where like most of the compositions are built off of buttons, like tabs, we use buttons, navigation, we use buttons. There's a lot of links, we use buttons sometimes based on to make sure it has the right properties, we use buttons. So there's a lot of possibilities. But if you see a component, it has a few things. One is the properties and the attributes, accessibility attributes, design attributes, functionality attributes, and then you have state, you have variations, you have form factor differences, you have themability aspects of it, and then you have what does it communicate, right, from a content standpoint. Does it say lorem ipsum, or does it say something more meaningful, you see? So that is a component. So like every touch point we have, either individually or as a team, there's like hundreds of decisions that go into each of these steps as we move forward, be it a component or a bunch of components. So it's a lot of thought that goes into it, and that only happens if we are working as one unit. Who is it for, right? So it's primarily for people who develop a product in code or design a product through design tools, you see. But in general, in a company, folks with all these different formal titles can use it, right? It's if you're making product, you can use it. It's for you, be it from an accessibility. So if you are doing accessibility on a site and you want to compare, you can use the fundamental building blocks of the system to make sure, is this using it, or if it's not using it, what's the delta? How can this product or website be more accessible based on the system guidelines? So it's a lot. It's everything for everyone. That's why it's called a system. Now, what are the potential benefits, right? I mean, quite a few, but just to rattle off the top, obviously, this is nobility, this is access use. So accessibility has been very fundamental, and it's been fundamental from the very genesis point, right? We have James Green sitting here, he was one of the founding leaders of the program, and accessibility was always in our DNA to make sure, and it's from Visa, so it's for everyone everywhere. So accessibility is fundamental. It's table stakes. It's one of our unique selling points, and that's one of our pillars. And collaboration, right? Does the system allow collaboration between different people, between different disciplines, functions, products? So that's collaboration, speed and efficiency. In 2025, if you have to be in guiding the tailwinds to make sure that you're going fast, you're efficient, you're helping the teams, you're boosting them up. We used to use a jet booster analogy before, but the system has to boost the process, speed up the process. Maybe you'll take a little bit of time to measure twice but cut once, but the cut once aspect will be fast and efficient. And consistency and trust. Right now, there's so many products using GenAI, be it Replit, Lovable, whatnot. There's a lot out there right now. And one of the key pieces of using an LLMs in the data sets is the consistency. If the same developer uses the same prompt, the chances of the same result are 50-50, at best. But how do you build a product with multiple team members in there, especially depending on the scale of the product? Is it going to be consistent? If you're building small, nimble products, but you're kind of cohesively building an experience together, is it going to be all coming together, both from functionality, accessibility, capability, and then the trust, right? So we are working on aspects of making sure the metadata of the design system is agentic, right? There are agentic design systems. We are on the same path. We have the metadata to connect that through MCP servers to make sure what's coming out of it is on the rails of the design system for Visa and beyond. So trust is a big part. Now, that's the fundamentals of where we are and what we've been up to, but we've had challenges and we've come on a journey, and KB is going to take us through that.
Yeah, thanks, Srini. So I'm going to start part one, the gap we faced, and kind of level set to where we were at. This is about the time that I joined the design system. We had an old system that couldn't keep up. It was great. It did what it needed to do. It was our first accessible version. It was called Vault Key. I had 53 components, but it had limited guidelines. It was mostly a do and a don't, maybe a paragraph about what to do and a bunch of red lines about how to implement it. We didn't have any content standards, and we certainly didn't have any native mobile support. And our challenge was meet the moment. Visa was rebranding, and our design at Visa.org was growing pretty quickly, and the system had hit its limits. And we needed a stronger foundation, we needed themability, we needed more options for people who might be doing third-party projects that need white labeling, and our system couldn't handle that. And our team had to grow too because of this. We added more than 12 new team members. I think someone told me it ended up 18 team members over the span of about a year, which is pretty wild to go from a really like small team. I think we had like originally one designer on the design system team. It was one woman, Kat, fantastic designer. But when you grow a team that exponentially, you don't have processes laid out. You don't have this documentation, and so you have all these people like really eager to start going, but there's no like tracks laid out for like how do we do this. So everyone got to work, but not together. And right here, we kind of representing the disparate nature of kind of what we were all doing. We got together on like, okay, it was a rebrand. We know what colors we're using. We got the tokenization stuff. And then we all went to work, but not together. So right here, we have some representation of just different shapes representing each kind of org, design, accessibility, dev, and content. And so we didn't have a single source of truth. And these are actual quotes from some of our users that we do. We do a lot of research to like gut check our choices. And so I'm going to read these quotes from actual users. One of the main challenges is to find a single place that houses all of this stuff that everyone can easily access. Another one, I don't use these often. Where are these guidelines? I would assume it's in the repository where I would expect it to be. And then the last one is, I find it confusing between the component files and the guidelines. We're about to have an intern, and honestly, I don't know where to send her. Yikes. It's not great feedback. It's important feedback, but like it's not great to hear. So as an example of how this manifested, we would have one component and 5 different versions. So here's a little chart that we drew up, kind of mapping out. Design has ours in Figma, which is like the design tool. Then we'll have a button page. And then here's our Figma examples for button. And then dev, we have 4 different code libraries. We have CSS styles, Flutter, React, and Angular. So each of those then had their own button page. And in that button page, they each had examples. So there's 5 different places. It's disparate depending on where you're building, what you're doing. You may see different things.
Can I add to that real
Yeah,
quick?
girl, go.
I think that another one of the challenges was that we were also migrating from like Adobe Sketch to Figma.
Yes.
And also a lot of these libraries, I think at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we only had like maybe React in terms of like the code libraries that we had in Angular. And so really what we had to do was build from the ground up in a lot of places. And so when you have teams all building at the same time, it's kind of hard to find a level of cohesion across when you're all kind of in your own corners doing your own work. So this was definitely a lesson kind of going back to college, you know, like group project thinking when you're kind of building things from the ground up. So I just wanted to add that real quick.
No, and that was great. And that reminded me too, because part of our rebrand work was not just like doing this whole new uplift of the thing, but also taking the existing design system and reskinning it with just the new colors and the new brand typeface, so that people had a light lift. If they were already using Vault Key, we added new colors, you can do that. So engineering, like they weren't even waiting on design to do the new stuff. They already had to go jump on getting the existing stuff up to speed, which then we called Vault Key Plus. And then while design was working on the like overhaul. So we all had a lot to do, and we started out quick with the best of intentions. And so we realized that we needed to kind of set up across a session to align. And these, what we're sharing right here, these are the rules we laid out for this session. And as like designers and content designers, we typically facilitate these in a way that you would facilitate design workshops. And so we wanted to make sure that our influence wasn't pushing a narrative, right? So we help define, like, this work will help define a shared perspective, language, and next steps for component example reviews. We want how the developer and accessibility manager, what their needs are to shape our actual process and what's feasible. And we want to value flexibility more than like forced alignment. And we also agreed to leave things behind, namely letting design dictate the outcome in isolation. And the big one is working in silos because it's easier. We said outright we're not going to do that. And so here's some of the insights from that workshop session. We got some stickies that say like cross technologies, component differences. For instance, Flutter may not use a link as much, you know, in native mobile, and their drawers and panels and navigation might work differently. And so that might not align with our Angular and our React examples. Another quote, I'd like to understand the dev expectations for what flexibility and what rigidity there needs to be so that design can compromise and build with optimal aligned objects in our system, including components, flows, guidelines, and code, and vice versa. There's also love too. Someone noted that reviews are rigorous because we were doing all these design reviews trying to align across all these things. Reviews are rigorous, intensive, and laborious. Dev team really appreciates design content and accessibilities team efforts. So we went in there, we're like, we're going to get it, we're going to align, and with the best intentions and with like keeping an eye out for each other and really appreciating the work that everyone brings to the table. So our next steps from there was that content would take a first pass at reviewing and organizing our examples. We kind of set a working group around our CSS library as an example to be the source of truth. And so we said not every component will need to be the same solution. We're going to be flexible where we need to be, and we're just going to communicate. And we're going to create a process and iterate on it throughout the reviews, and we're going to ensure it's repeatable and scalable. And so now I'm going to pass it off to Brandy, who is integral in part 2, laying the foundation.
Thanks, KB. All right, I want to circle back on one thing that KB said, which was probably a point that y'all heard and were like, I wonder what that meant, which is not having everything being design first or design led. I think when I joined the team, I definitely kind of noticed that things were starting with design more so, and then it was more of that traditional like handoff dev process, which I think a lot of teams, there's a lot of research that kind of backs this in like agile frameworks, like don't just hand off, right? It's really a more collaborative process. So I think that was kind of the first thing that we really like identified is like, everything is kind of starting with design and then going to dev, and then it was kind of like a ripple effect where things would kind of go to them and it would come back because there would be certain functionalities and things like that that weren't really feasible. So it could be really anything at that point. So we have the button that broke the system. I think I was a little naive when I joined the team. I was a little bit newer to product design specifically. I'd been a content designer before that at Shopify. And we really didn't focus as much on accessibility, to be honest. So it was kind of a steep learning curve for me. So when I came on, I was like, yeah, of course, like little Delulu, I can do this. Like, it's just a naming exercise. I can, of course, bring headings in and I can make the labels consistent. But once we got in there and kind of started looking at everything and started kind of going through the reviews, it was more of what I would say was like a typical handoff process. We look at it, we have a review page. We basically would set it up where you can see here on the side, we have like current and expected. On the left would be like the current components, what they look like. And then on the right would be like, hey, we expect it to be like this. We have numbered changes, like change this heading to this, change this label to that, little things like that. We were also serving kind of as like a second set of eyes for design as well, just to kind of see if we could catch anything additional. Because at this point, I think y'all had already gone through a few like review cycles and we're already trying to fix a lot of these things. But like we said, there were, I think at this point, about 30 components in the system that had been built across Figma. And they were kind of rolling through the other code libraries at that point. So if you do the math on that, if there's 5 different and there's only 10 different, like, and this is a minimum, there's probably way more than that. If there's only 10 examples, like within a button per se, like you have a primary button, you have a secondary button, you have a tertiary button. Within those, there could be 5 more examples within that. So you do the math, that's over 500 components to look at, which is a little bit, if you've ever seen the Charlie Day, like the Pepe Silva.
Legally allowed
We're not,
to
yep.
image in the slideshow per our legal team.
Yes.
Use your imagination.
Yeah.
You'll know what I'm talking about.
But it kind of becomes a game of like mapping, and you're like, okay, this one goes here and that one's there, and is this one really that one? I'm not really sure if this is the same component or if it's a different one, if it's a new variant or a new example that needs to be added. So I think once we got in there, it was really the button that broke the system. You see a button, you're like, oh, it's just a button, it's easy, it has text on it, cool. Nope, not at all. So you can kind of see here before, we really had this flat list of components. What we have, it says before, we had an H1 that said button, that's what it is. And then you would get down to the H2s and it would say default, secondary button, tertiary with icon. And those weren't really descriptive headings or names, really is fundamentally what they are. We really track the names are the H1s or the H2s on our like actual websites. So that's really important for us. We had to set that up from the get-go because we knew that we needed that single source of truth in the future, the website. So we really had to go through and expand the naming and come up with what we called naming formulas. So we had a bunch of different ones for different types of components, because components can have varying levels of functionality, visuals, things like that. And descriptive headings are obviously a big deal for accessibility for WCAG. And then we have an internal system, which is VGAR, that is, built to mirror WCAG. I think we're at 2.2 now, and I think Visa we're at A and AA. So we really pride ourselves on accessibility, and headings are a fundamental part of that. So our formulas here, we have a default plus the variant plus the component. We also have the state plus the variant plus the component, and then the variant, the component, and with an element. So there's really a lot of different things that you can kind of smush together to make a descriptive heading. And then the labeling trap, like I said, you think, oh, it's easy. I can just label all of these as like primary default. We even, I think at one point, were like, button text, and then it's like, oh no, don't have the role or the name of the component in it. So there was really a lot of it was a big learning curve for me, being someone who didn't come from design systems as well. You think, oh, I can make this one small change, but then you really start to see how quickly it can ripple through the system and really make a big difference. So we really had to align on this and make sure that our labels were, descriptive. They weren't including the role, but that they were also, telling the purpose of the button. So we ended up landing on primary action, which is like what the purpose is of the button. It completes an action, and we kind of brought those all into a similar place. Then there were a lot of visual misalignments as well. So we would have like a primary button with icons you can see here. Some of the variations would be like in CSS, they kind of give you everything in the kitchen sink. You get a leading icon, you get a trailing icon. In the Flutter example, you get a leading icon. Some of them might be like two colors. I think the primary default for Flutter was like 2-color. And then you have like React and Angular, where you see React is really mirroring what the CSS is doing, but they're using a different icon. So it was it was different across the board. And then behavioral differences. So in a lot of cases, some of the more complex components and even the more simplistic, and I say simplistic with a caveat because, as we just talked about, they're not. But you have something like a tertiary button. Some of them in the different workshops that we would have like a full width button that would be spanning the entire page. We also have different, like buttons might function differently. They might act as a link in some cases. So we might have a button coded as a link, and vice versa, right? So it's trying to figure out where those go and how you name them, because it's really important to make sure that people know, hey, this is a button, it's coded as a link. And it's different than a typical button because it's not triggering an action, it's taking you to a destination just like a link would. And then triage. So I think Imran, KB, many of the folks here on this at this panel can kind of talk to this. This was not an easy thing to kind of get off the ground. Originally, we kind of, like we said, started working in silos, which was really difficult because we were sending tickets back and forth via Jira, right? So there's a lot that can get lost in communication when you're sending in like a digital format. It's like, think about every time you've gotten a message on Teams and you're like, does that sound mean? Like, what is this person saying right now? So there can be a lot that's lost in, especially like technically when you're trying to explain something that's a difficult concept. Really to grasp. So really the key to this was getting together on a weekly call and talking and making sure that we all had a shared understanding and perspective of like what was needed so that we all could weigh in and basically co-create this together. So we had a weekly call, I think it was on Thursdays, and we would kind of, there's a chart here that you can kind of see. We broke it down by sprints. So this was back in like July. I think this was like 2 years ago. I don't even know at this point. It's a blur. And we would basically group them by related components. So we would do like button and link at the same time. We would do like radio and checkbox at the same time. Components that really were similar that we wanted to make sure were consistent across the board. Because that's one of the things. You might do a button and then you do like a more complex one, like a multi-select. And if you start looking at those, there's consistencies that you need like in the button for like a multi-select, but you also need to look at the components that are maybe at the same level. If you think of them like atomically, the smaller components should be looked at together, the more complex ones like selects really should be looked together as well. But as we started doing this, we got faster because we were making decisions. We were saying, okay, this is what the button labels are going to be, so we could go ahead and ripple those changes throughout the entire system. And it took us a year to do this. A year of calls, a year of buttons, a year of bonding, a year of us all kind of being like, am I crazy? Am I misreading this? And, you know, it was really what I would call like therapy in a way, like us coming together. But we definitely celebrated around this, like closed out, I think I wrote this, I closed out what I think are my last 2 component review tickets from dev, because sometimes they would come back and it'd be like, hey, we actually need to change these things, or sometimes we would align and we would actually need to go back to the drawing board and design. We would need to change some of the components, change some of the headings, the labels again. It really just would depend once we got down to implementation, and then accessibility starts testing and making sure that everything's working. Yeah. Oh.
So is this a year of dedicated work, or did you have to juggle other things like serving product design or your own projects and things like that?
Yeah. That's actually a great question. It was juggling. I think I was more focused on this. So we had 2 content designers that were working on this. Whenever we would have the weekly calls, we would basically prep, like pre-triage. So my content partner and I, we would go through the reviews that we had. We would go ahead and try to make things as consistent as we could. And then we would basically like prep questions before the calls. So everybody was like ready to kind of jump in on the same page. But I think at the time I was also working on, we were trying to get our website off the ground at the same time. So we were also building the prototypes for that, having working sessions around that as well. Yeah, new component additions as well, because like I said, we had about, I think 30 at the time, and now we have 40 plus, and we have 12 patterns now. We were also doing research at the time to bring patterns back into the system. That was something that we had taken out based on some other research, but then we were like, oh, there's like a fundamental step missing here, which are more complex combinations of components. That's what a pattern would be. Think about like a wizard, file upload, things like that. So there was always a lot of juggling, and to this day, I think we juggle a lot.
Yeah. Can I also take
Yeah.
part of the question? So, I mean, that's a great question, right? Like, I think it was a mix too. Like, some folks like yourself, Brandy, you had to like kind of juggle kind of a couple different projects. And there was also a part of the team which was more dedicated too, right? Like it would have been really hard if we had focused energy, and that's like kudos to our senior leadership before and now who chartered the program, and that focused energy, because it's a lot, right? So at any one day, we have a few engineers here. So one of their daily looks like, and y'all can validate this, right? So it's like part making, part supporting, right? They have the previous generations of the design system which is being used in production, and like developers are in a rush, they're always asking questions. We have office hours, they're fixing bugs, and then you have to switch context into some of the management meeting type events, but then you also have to do the deep work, which is building the next generation. The one that is public is called Nova, that major version, and we are building 4 different technology libraries, like 3 on web platforms, CSS, React, Angular, and 1 on native mobile. Yeah, without the dedication of that full-time resourcing, this would not be possible. And that's just thanks to the demand and the need and the opportunity and the senior leadership support. Yeah, just wanted to answer that one time.
Yeah.
No, I think it stays with you, Srini.
Oh, building the span? Oh, well, this is the review process part. So this is part that Imran gets to speak to, because this is the wild part. So this is kind of, basically, this is what our review process looked like that we just talked y'all kind of through, what it was before. And obviously there are visuals here that are very small, so the slides will be shared. So if you want to zoom in on that, you obviously feel free to do that. There's also speaker notes in here, which hopefully are very helpful as well. But basically what's on here is a diagram where it kind of shows how things moved through a design review process from design to dev. And like I said, it was more of a traditional handoff process. It's like, here is the flow of the tickets, which are also important, not saying that we didn't do that as well in JIRA, but we also included these calls to kind of set us up to send those things, basically. So it started with the backlog. Things would be marked as ready for design. I'm even trying to read them like design in progress. If there's design feedback, yes or no, that's what the yellow is. And kind of based on that, it's like, does it go ready for development or not? Does it get kicked back? And then it would have either a peer review, dev in progress, resolve close. So there, even though this is design and dev process, there's two things missing from there, content and accessibility. So typically what would happen is, I think between design feedback, maybe ready for development, they would come to us to kind of do a final review, and then a lot of the times we would end up kicking the tickets back to them and being like, we actually have a lot to change here. So we had to evolve the process basically to bring accessibility and content in early and often. And this one is also kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see on the left, there's two gray boxes. So it was our backlog ready for design. And then we actually have design in progress and content in progress. So we really partner with design a lot on the content team. I actually come from an advertising background. So copywriters, art directors, you work hand in hand. Those are your best friends. You have a lot of work wives and husbands, and you live it and love it all together. So we really implemented that. And then we also would bring in accessibility right after that, I believe. Yep. Ally review then would happen right after that. So we wouldn't implement. We basically brought accessibility in earlier. And I'll hand it off to Imran if he wants to add anything.
Sure. Thank you, Brandy. So I'd probably like to add some background to what the process was and what we have today. Right. So KB has mentioned earlier that our older version was Walkie Plus, and we had two libraries there, React and Angular. We did each of those libraries at separate times. So first we did, I think, React, and then we moved to Angular. And that is probably one of the reasons why you see the differences in labeling or the differences in examples. And that was one of our major concerns in terms of inconsistencies to share. So when I partnered with Brandy on content, and that's one of my major concerns that I shared with her, was like, I do not have one-to-one mapping. Although React and Angular are similar in terms of JavaScripts, I do not have examples where I can probably relate to each other. And even though if I can relate them, there are no labels, there are inconsistent labels. So from that history where we had two different libraries with different inconsistencies, moving to Nova, right? That's the version we call for Visa Design System. We worked with engineering accessibility team, where one of the slides that KB shared had 4 different functions: design, engineering, accessibility, and content. Although those 4 different functions seem different, we always had one-to-many mapping, meaning accessibility always worked with engineering, accessibility worked with design team, but then accessibility did not work with content team. So as KB mentioned earlier, as Brandy mentioned earlier, when she got onboarded, she was actually looking at what do we have as currently and what are we expecting. Meanwhile, accessibility was actually reporting all of those in the silo to engineering team to fix those issues. And then Brandy one day was like, wait a minute, are you doing this too? We should partner up. And then that's exactly where, accessibility is also looking at labels, heading structure, hierarchy, when in fact, content team is exactly doing that in all these examples. So that's some brief history about, what we were doing for the previous versions, what we are doing for the current versions. And that is how the JIRA as a process evolved. So how do we track all this progress, right? So in terms of when for our previous version, Walkie Plus, when we were reporting tickets, we were directing them to engineering. Engineering was fixing it, we were retesting them, and then of course we were solving it and then closing the tickets. And that was just one-to-one mapping with engineering. How were we working with design? As Brandy mentioned, we were working with Sketch, we were working with InVision. Our feedback was communicated via comments within InVision. and these comments could be lost. These comments could not be resolved. Some of them could be resolved. So there was some gap there where, what am I communicating to the design team? What am I communicating to the engineering team? If there is any issue that I'm reporting to engineering team, that may be a design related issue, right? And how do I escalate that to design? So this process helped us evolve that, where we brought in all together. So raise your hands, when was the last time you saw 5 instructors on the board? Have you seen any design, engineering, content, accessibility come together and then share, the same vision and the goal that we have today? So that is what we brought together. As Srini in one of his slides shared, collaboration and trust, and that is what we built. And this process is one of the examples where we evolve to this, and then we continue to evolve it. Today we continue to evolve it, where KB conducts her grooming sessions, where she, plain straightforward, in the next slides probably she'll speak about it, where she'll clearly lay out what am I expecting in this grooming session, and then what am I not expecting at this point, where that will be discussed in the future. Right. So in this process, you can see, I'll read it out, where, we are getting involved. We are taking that left shift where accessibility is getting involved with design, during design and during content reviews. Of course, engineering is delivering the code. We are testing them, evaluating them using our VGAR, Visa Global Accessibility Requirements. We have our own version of Visa Global Requirements where they are in compliance with WCAG 2.2. And of course, when we report these issues get resolved, and then hence we deliver an accessible component. So that's what the process is about. I hope I added. Srini, would you like to add something?
Amazing.
I think they covered it all. But however, as something like a practical takeaway, right? Like how this happened. We started with like sketching out, deep think, put some time in on what your function's workflow is, put it together, use Figma, use a simple flowchart. We started there, and then we add another function, right? Like we mapped our processes, add another function, map our processes, and then like you have a joint discussion, is this making sense? And keep iterating on it. We never settle. We tuned it until like kinks were worked out, and then when we have new things to expand on, we are sure this won't hold up. So we'll keep iterating on it. I think that, and that can only happen because we are curious. I think beyond the collaboration and trust, what's underneath that is just kindness. Be curious, be a good human being, and focus on the challenge, not the person who made that, right? Like, I think it's easy to say, Brandy, like you came in, like, why are you making extra work? It's easy to say that, but it's harder to like, why is she saying that? Like, connect with the person, bond with the person, and then get curious. Be kind, be open, and things will take time. It will take time, but it will happen. It's like a glacier. It's coming. It's heavy, but it's steady, so.
Yeah, and on the next slide, we have how our design process also was redesigned to really like meet this moment, like we said. So this was another one that is probably a little hard to view as well. But basically, we used to kind of start with design where we would just be doing discovery and research and kind of doing it in a silo for new components. And this is really what the process is for any like new component, new pattern. Whenever you start building those from the ground up, it's a very complex process. You really have to evaluate what's out there, see how other companies are doing it, look at our past examples. Did the component exist in Vault Key or Vault Key Plus? Are there any guidelines that exist out there? What are the industry best practices? What research exists? Like Nielsen Norman Group is great. So we really have to like reference and look at a lot of things. So design would kind of start that process, and then we would create the components. We would start building the assets in Figma, really before bringing in, accessibility or content. But we reimagined our process for design to really bring in, like we said, accessibility and engineering ahead of schedule rather than just handing off. We bring everybody in to collaborate on what is our shared vision for these components. How do we want it to function? What do we want the look and feel of it to be? What functionality do we want to include? What's the behavior? And aligning on that early, because when you look at something in Figma, it's static, right? You don't know what it's actually going to do. And once you start implementing, that's when everything kind of can get blown up a little bit. So we really made sure to incorporate everyone and talk through the functionality, show all the different states, And then it really helped us refine this process now where we're all co-creating these components from the ground up, not just ping-ponging them back and forth.
Yeah, and one thing that we took from the catch-up game we played with using CSS as our source of truth is we didn't want to do that again. So this is moving forward. We are going to bring everyone in early so that we're not coming up against these issues late in the game, having to do a lot of rework. And for design, like I'm sure if there are any designers, they're just like, I just want to get in there and I just want to start like designing it out. And so we really took a step back to be like function first. And we started actually, as our process, we write the guidelines before we build the component, because we have to understand how to explain what a button is and how it works before we worry about what it looks like. And so that's part of this process, and we carried it through with this concept of a project champion. That is the person that takes it through. They set up all the meetings. They are the touch point person. This does not have to be a senior designer. We have had associate level designers being project champions. And so it's like, you're the one just to make sure that like nothing falls between the cracks. You're the point of contact. You bring everyone together. And that really has served us as well. And transitioning to, this is kind of what Imran had talked about before, when we came together in Discovery and kick off something, design brought all this research that we found and we present it to everyone, and what we realized is not everyone's a designer or a content designer. Our content designers and designers, we are loud and boisterous, we are super talkative, but not everyone communicates that way, right? So we're incorporating also accessibility into our processes of providing digital whiteboards with forms for people who maybe might be shy, might not be talkative, might be worried about interrupting people in a way that sometimes designers aren't. So being able to say like, your voice is important and we really need your feedback. So what we do is we have a recurring feedback file that we use whenever we come for cross-functional touch points. It has a section, we kind of showed it in the screenshot here, what's working, what can be improved, any questions you have, and any ideas that you have. And we go through those, and we always provide context. Underneath that, it's also a little hard to see, but if you zoom in later with the slides, we set up where we are in the process. And at this one, there's a star next to early, and basically it says, at this stage, we want feedback on the overall scope, best practices, proposed patterns, development concerns, accessibility concerns, usability, feasibility, and any clarifying questions. And again, since we're starting guidelines first, usually in this conversation we have an outline of our guidelines, what we think this thing will do. Is anyone concerned with that kind of thing? And then at this stage, what we don't want feedback on. We're not married to any language. We're not married to any visual things. So like, don't bother. Don't waste your time. Really, it really is not helpful for you. So it's like, it helps us have these focused conversations, and this goes to this theme that we continuously have, that clarity is kindness, and being really straightforward with what the expectations are, allow people to really focus on my avenue, what they're looking for from me, what these expectations are, what I'm bringing to this meeting, and that really increased people's ability to like feel free to collaborate. They know their lane, they know what they're doing. And also feeling valued, feeling like my voice is important, that I'm contributing to it. And I'm also there's absolutely no dumb questions policy. I think that's like when you're getting into design, it's like the whys. When you're asking the why of it, it's not because I don't think you understand and I want you to explain it to me. It's because I want to know why it works that way. I want to know to make sure we're on the same page and we're all creating a shared language. I know, do you have a question, sir? Here.
I was encouraged to hear you say you don't believe in dumb questions. So I had one. Is there, when teams of different expertise get together, there's always kind of a I'm going to stay in my lane mentality. How much did you all encourage each other to do some maybe cross-pollination? Like somebody from the engineering said, hey, you know what would be good for content? Or someone like that, something like that.
Thank you. That is a great question. And I'll give my answer, and I'm sure everyone else has some thoughts as well. But I am a person where I I'm neurodivergent, so I always over-explain things to people because I want to be understood. So I always say, you know, in my mind, I think of this as like, it's a list box. And I'm sure my engineers, this conversation is very familiar to them. But I'm like, that's to me. You tell me what makes sense for a developer to call this, the language that you use, content-wise. What does it make sense for you? And I think just being really honest about your commitment, I'm like, this, I'll say like, I'm not attached to this. I am like, this is not delicate, please, like, and also I think incumbent upon design and content design coming to the table with pointed questions as well, to say like, I really have a question about this accessibility-wise. I know in the past we've done this and this and this. Why is that? Is there any flexibility to that? What are any, it's at a place of understanding, and I think when you come prepared to speak directly to those other groups and say like, no, I actually do really want your feedback on like a design thing because I want to know what makes sense to engineers, because that informs it. So I think it's also, it's like, for me, it's level setting on like how firmly I believe in something and say like, don't worry, we can call it something else if that makes more sense to Dev.
I can add to that too. Like,
Go ahead. I just had a quick follow-up.
yeah. Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to ask. I was just going to ask if there were particular instances you can cite. I mean, sometimes you get so close to the forest you can't see the trees. If you could elaborate on that.
Okay, this happened probably within the last, I'll give it back to her. This happened within the last month. We are kicking off a new pattern in our system, filtering content. How do you filter content? It's a pattern, it's not gonna be a component, it's gonna be like how you group components together to build something. In Discovery, had heard from multiple product teams that they wanted this certain feature to be able to be filtered within a table, like in a data table, to have the filters in the columns. I'd never seen that before. I did some research. Teams had done it 2 different ways. To me, the 2 different ways they were doing it was a design aesthetic choice. Is it this way or is it this way? I felt a lot of pressure as the designer. It's like, oh, this is going to be my choice that I have to make. It's an aesthetic choice, this one or the other. In Discovery, I presented it option A, option B. I said, you know what, y'all? I'm stuck. I don't know what we should do. I want to put it to the team. Overwhelmingly, unanimously, everyone picked option B. From their expertise, this was the easiest choice to do. It was better for tab, like for keystroke users. It was better for development, and other designers thought it looked better. So it was one instance where I'm thinking this is a purely aesthetic choice, and I was so wrong, and that people all had opinions on, I think this will work better. And I think that is about like being honest with like, I would just really love this feedback, because you don't know what other people know. And I think that's what's great about working collaboratively as a team, is I lean on these folks all the time to keep me honest about their expertise, and I trust them, and it's about that trust and knowing that like they know, he knows developers, she knows how to like tell a story, how to be consistent in our voice, he knows accessibility, so I know a little bit of each of those, and so that trust and like being upfront, I think that's my example.
Yeah. I think for content, like I can speak to my experience too, which is a lot of the times you're like, oh, you're just here for words, right? You're just here to review the text on the page. But I think that I have never operated that way. I mean, it's in the name, content design. It's not content strategy. It's not UX writer. It's content designer. So as much as, you know, KB is in a Figma file and a design file, I'm in there with her. I'm co-creating with her the entire time. I'm not a Figma expert by any means, but they set up everything in such a way that I can get in there. It's really easy for me to work. Also, part of my job is really translating these really complex technical specifications. Like we said, we have usage guidance. I'm not a UX expert. That's not even my background. Like I said, I cut my teeth in advertising. Product was really new to me, and it was something I had to learn quickly, and working in the design system was a perfect place for that because I got a crash course, that's for sure. So you kind of get thrown in the deep end a little bit, and then when people see you kind of drowning, they're like, hey, like, I got you, I can help you, you know, figure this out. And I think something that I had to learn early, because you know, I had imposter syndrome because I was like, I don't go here. Like, you want me to help you like write some pretty words for like a product marketing page? I got you. You want me to help you come up with headings and labels and things? I got you. But when it came to more of the technical specifications, how things functioned, more of like the underneath the hood type things, I really had to lean on Imran engineering to really help educate me and also like feel empowered to ask dumb questions was really a tough thing, because a lot of times, you know, you don't want to ask the question that you're like, and a lot of people start with like, I know this might be a dumb question, but, and most of the time when I would start that way, people are like, no, that's not a dumb question. I actually have the same question. And I actually don't know how it does that. So we need to figure that out together. So I think it's really like empowering each other to come into each other's lanes as well. And especially for me, where like I said, I have to write about it. I need to understand exactly what they understand as well, so that I can distill it into clear, concise, succinct content that people can understand and apply, especially across usage guidance when they're like, how do I implement this? What do I do? What do I not do? Yeah.
I was going to say something kind of generic about being in accessibility. I don't think you can be in accessibility and stay in your lane. I think in that place, you really need to bring an attitude of curiosity all the time, because kind of part of the job is to walk into a meeting with the designer, with the dev, and be like, now why does it look like that again? Now why does that button do that? What is that supposed to do? Because I can't tell. And just kind of be like, and that can feel really vulnerable, because you're coming in sometimes from the outside, maybe you haven't been in from the beginning, and they've got a whole way of working, and they've got a whole rationale for why things are, and maybe your first thought is, this is a problem, but you don't want to be like, maybe I'm totally wrong, you know, what do I need to do? And so, like, you can't come at it with this, like, I'm just here to talk about labels, I'm just here to, you know what I mean? You need to actually be able to jump in there and contribute.
Yeah, I'll be respectful of the time, but I'll add a couple of points, right? Like, I'll go back to my discussion about one-to-many mapping, right? Like, well, accessibility is working with design, content, engineering. Of course, within engineering, we had 5 versions: CSS, React, Angular, and then Flutter. With that being said, right, like while I'm working with Flutter, Java is on mobile engineering team, there are certain concerns, certain behaviors that may work for components within mobile Flutter, but they do not work with React, Angular, and or CSS. So that kind of helped me to like not stay in silo, but then also communicate that like this is not the behavior that can be expected within Flutter. So the expectations in terms of like examples, because there are certain components within Flutter that may not be existing within, or there are certain examples in CSS, React, and Angular that may not be existing within Flutter. Some of the examples that I think Brandy mentioned was about link or navigation or tabs. So basically having that communicated rather than, oh, you know what, I'm just gonna work with Flutter and mobile, and then that's my only lane. Because we did not do that. We communicated that with the entire team, and then lay out expectation in terms of what is expected within Flutter, because Flutter, it was first time that we were doing for within Flutter. Both engineering as well as accessibility had their learnings in terms of what is expected, how is screen reader behaving, how are some of the components being interacted, because we were doing testing with touch gestures. We were doing testing with Bluetooth keyboard, connecting it to Bluetooth keyboard. So their behaviors differed. And of course, not to mention the screen readers also differ, where, within desktop, we are testing it with JAWS, which was our priority 1. Of course, we have other priorities such as VoiceOver and NVDA, but then we were doing it priority 1 at the time. And within Flutter, we were doing Android. So the expectations differed, and of course, that was communicated across. And I hope everyone did not stay in their own lanes. We had that open communication. Sri.
I think we've covered enough on that. I hope you feel pretty situated, sir. But I think what inertia is a powerful force, right? So it takes a lot of energy to like move and stay in motion. And like we all have stars, and every team and every company, they all have stars. But if you leave it to the stars, they'll all stay in their corners. What you need is a constellation, right? So the things that come together have meaning and changes form and function, you see. So anyway.
Yeah, I think we have a question.
Yeah, and I'll try to keep this quick. I know y'all got to keep going. One thing in dealing with development in particular is hardly anybody speaks development's language. So when development says no, I was wondering what some of the collaboration points are, because you're trying to speak German versus people speaking Spanish. How do y'all communicate? And then also when you speak no, have the aha moment of, oh, well, maybe I can do that.
I myself was a developer, so that was easy for me to communicate with engineering team. So I understood that language, but then with the caveat that accessibility was never a hindrance or impediment. And this is true for both content and design and engineering. So it kind of helped me to communicate that with my engineering team, which is where I spend most of my time with. And of course, design and content are involved too, but they are in the early stages where everyone is involved, everyone is providing feedback. But then in the end, when engineering is coding and they're providing the code for me to test the component, that is when it helped me, my background helped me to communicate that. But then not to mention, you have to be a developer to communicate it to the with engineering. There's always, we have an all the engineering team are accessibility champions. They're well aware of what they're doing. From like, I have worked with teams where I had provided fundamental feedback in terms of providing all text to images. And one of the decorative images that I had was like, go ahead and provide alt null, and the developer literally put NULL in the alt text, right? So I've worked with developers as that, but I'm working with engineering champions here who are accessibility champions who know their basic fundamental to advanced level accessibility implementations. And what we do is solve complex situations, complex problems from file upload, from wizards, from date selectors, from navigations, from panels, etc.
I can add to that, actually. So as a content designer, I'm not technical, like I said. And I would often get on calls with like Imran, and he's a deep expert in accessibility and engineering development. And a lot of the times I was completely lost. I was like, I do not understand even what you were talking about or and of course I would learn that over time. But I found what really helped was we had a shared Figma file where we would have all of the reviews and everything would be laid out. And in many cases, I would just open up like a text box and be like, okay, one of the things that I always say is say it straight and say it great. Basically, give me the plainest version of like, if you were just starting your fledgling developer, or you're me, how would you explain this to someone at an 8th grade level so that they could understand it and that they actually have something meaningful to take away? Another really great way to kind of bridge that gap in terms of knowledge is to ask them for examples. Can you show me a real live example, whether it's in another design system or if it's in an app that you really like? Can you show me that so that I can actually play with it and see how it functions, see what they're using, really bring me like industry examples so that I know what you are trying to communicate to me.
Let me take that. I think it's a few approaches you can definitely take on this one. There's a really good book. I highly recommend this. It's called Never Split the Difference. It's huge on negotiation. Like, I've gone through that, take notes, apply those techniques, practice that. So for when they say no, that's mostly the start of the conversation, and I think it's not a technical issue. You're starting with a human challenge right there, and just start getting into understanding. There's so many techniques you can apply, like start with the 5 whys or just start talking to the person, like just bond with the person. Probably they had a bad night. Probably they have something, like my dog Percy, and some of my team members know that. So 3 a.m. in the morning, he's cold, so I have to go put on his blanket in the middle of the night. This is every night. But if that happens many times a night, then obviously I'm way more grumpier than usual. So maybe that happened to that person, on that specific day. I feel like bonding, I think the human challenge is what you're facing initially. If you get past those defenses, the no is a defense shield coming down. And then the first step is like remove that shield, like bond with the person, start building the rapport. I think it's a harder, longer path. It's not a quick solution on that situation. But then pretty soon when you get past those differences, you will get into like why simple, and the techniques that the team offered, simple language, because any deep technical work can be explained in simple terms. There's this book called The Thing Explainer, which is like all the NASA rocket ship stuff can be explained in simple terms. There's just no reason tech stuff cannot be explained in simple language for 5-year-olds, for 10-year-olds. It can be done. So.
Yep. Just very quickly, sorry, you get 5 presenters, you get 5 people that want to talk. So yeah, one example I think right now that I'm dealing with of that is working with designers to get them to annotate the designs to pass on information that developers need to make sure that it's coded accessibly. They need all their information. And I'll look at something and say, oh, this needs to be REL alert, it needs to be polite, and whatever, all this kind of stuff. And you watch their kind of their color drain because they're like, I don't know what you're saying, I don't know what any of that means. And I want to get to a place where they can do this independently. I don't need to be always jumping in and providing these accessibility annotations. And so part of the question is figuring out like who's responsible for what. The developer needs to know some of this accessibility stuff and what this means. And I think you have the right answer, which is that there is a way that the designer can put that in plain language that they understand, even if they don't use the exact technical term. What they need to describe is what the expected behavior is. And then the next person who gets it can then kind of translate into their language, that can translate that technical information. It's great if they can speak the same language, if the designer can put in it all in technical details, awesome. But if not, I think you can work with that.
They said encourage designers to utilize Figma plugins with digital accessibility annotation kits. They don't have to start from scratch.
Yeah. We do have some difficulties like working for a corporation like Visa with plugins. We do have some like things where we have to get permissions and stuff, but there are great accessibility plugins out there if you can use them. I was going to say really quickly, just from a design perspective, I believe that my job is to not push my opinion. It's to serve the end users, right? And our end users are developers and designers. And so I'm doing a disservice to the consuming engineers of the system if I am putting my preference for language or my preference for something over what makes sense to them. So that's where I feel like as a designer, it's my job to actually defer to like, no, what is the industry term for this? Like, it's about like knowing when it's like, no, this is not the time for me to like make a stand about what I think like this should be kind of thing. It's about like, okay, is this an industry standard? Okay, is this something people will know? No? Okay. Then we have a little bit more wiggle room to use more human-centered language that, like Brandy said, we try to get things at like a middle school reading level for accessibility because, they're complicated things and we want everybody, especially people who English may not be their first language, to be able to understand what we're trying to convey. All right, so I'm going to breeze through this. This is another, we did a lot of planning. Everything together, as you can tell, everything all together all the time. So we mapped out our quarterly planning. We did epic refinement together. Here's an image of our little digital whiteboarding mapping out all our connecting meetings. It's a little schedule. And then we had rituals that stuck. Another thing that we did was we were not precious with our rituals. If we did them and we found that they stopped serving us, we stopped them. If we found that we needed that connection point again, we started them again. And I think that's one big theme of what we did is just not being precious with things when you learn new information. And so we had rituals that stuck where we would do our sprint planning, we'd do our epic refinement, and then we'd have like leads would meet once a week, and then we'd have like quarterly reviews and things, and we just like made sure that we were intentional about our touch points, but not precious. And so retros, we did a lot of retros. So again, with the not precious, we use different frameworks. These are just screenshots just for illustrative purposes of how many digital whiteboarding sessions we did. We used different frameworks. Some of it was like past, present, future to talk about what we've done, what we're doing, what we want to do. We've also done rose, bud, thorn, if you're not familiar with that. Roses are strengths and positives, thorns are weaknesses, negatives, and buds are opportunities for growth. And we would do those, everyone would write them out, we'd come together, we'd find themes, and that would help us prioritize, okay, what are we leaving behind? What are we taking with us? So that is a key, and it can get a little squishy, it can get a little uncomfortable, but it's all about like finding the healthy points of tension. And like, why is there tension? Is it good tension? Is it like for the better of it? Is it bad tension? How do we move forward with that? And that led to a cultural shift. And so we went from everybody in their own lanes, everybody going forth, best intentions all together, to collective ownership. And trust replaced turf. This is a huge one. And this kind of goes to that, like, knowing when it's like, no, this is, I trust Srini in engineering that this is the dev standard. I'm going with them. I'm not being defensive. I'm not being protective of what I think is mine or an idea of ownership. Asking questions was a strength, right? Not a sign of weakness. Again, there's no such thing as a bad question or a silly question. It's about creating a level set language that we all are speaking. And again, back to the naming of things, like if someone comes to us and asks for a primary button with a leading icon that is the same in every library, you see it, everyone knows what it is, we can all talk together to it. And that way the system was a unifier, we speaking a common language. And this is important, documentation became dialogue. And this is back to the idea of like, I think, like as a designer, I think we should do it this way. But again, this is from a design perspective. It's about having that conversation, making sure it's like, does this jive with you? Does this jive with you? Is everyone cool? I love this little thing. I didn't share it, but it's a little Figma like widget, and it's this little alignment meter. And it said, and I always say like, whenever we're doing a meeting, it's like, I think that the scope of this project is sufficient to meet our users' needs. And it's a little spectrum, and it's one side it's like strong disagree, strong agree, and in the middle kind of. And I wrap up sessions because one, it's fun, make it fun for people. People love clicking buttons and stuff, right? So it's like, how aligned are we? Are we leaving this meeting on the same page? Does everyone know what we're gonna build? And if it's strongly disagreed, I did a bad job and I got to go back and I got to make sure as the product champion that I'm bringing everyone together, that everyone's on the same page. And in that way, again, clarity is a kindness. Being straightforward, being honest when you don't know. I don't know, but I'll figure it out, or I'll ask around. And those were big takeaways. So opening the bridge. How we used to work, and again, this is the graphic we showed earlier, is 4 disparate shapes representing design, accessibility, dev, and content. We were doing our own thing separately, and then how we work now on the right is a Venn diagram. Now all of those shapes are circles, we overlap, and in the center is VPDS. Everything is together. Again, I think what better metaphor than having everyone present, because it's not design or content telling the story. It is all of us telling the story because we're all invested in it. And then the benefit is we made a really easy sell to our leadership that we should make our design system public because it was so solid, it was so consistent. We didn't have to go back and change anything. All we had to do was make a new website. And so this is the magnificent, let me see if I can, design.visa.com. It is open to the public. You can go see it. I didn't have it. It's everywhere. Yeah, so this is our lovely website. We got a little hero image of kind of abstracted components. I love this site. It was a huge labor of love. This team was building components and building the site at the same time. And one thing that I absolutely love, and that you don't even have to use our components to use this, our content, we have content guidelines. It talks about how to write accessible text, how to speak in inclusive language, if you're using options for gender identity, how to do that in an inclusive way, how to let people self-identify in ways that just makes everyone feel involved. I love our content guidelines. It helps you write error messages, helps you write button text. Yeah, make them verbs in language that helps you create consistency. We never had that before, and this is one of the things that I love about the system that proves that, like, you don't have to use the components to use the system. And so I would encourage you all, it is open to the public. You can go to design.visa.com right now and check it out. There's so much good stuff on there, literally thousands of pages.
I think when I counted at one point, it was like 250 unique pages just for the components alone. Usage tabs, accessibility tabs, and code tabs. So that just for components.
Yeah, and real quickly, I'll just show you kind of the end result of that work that we had done. We had five unique places where you could find our components in our guidelines. In Figma, in the React workshop, in the Angular workshop, in the CSS workshop, and in the Flutter workshop. Now we have one place where you can find everything. We have our code tab, which includes all of, and part of our hierarchy allowed us to use anchor link menus to let people navigate the page more easily. So we have primary text buttons as an H2 that you can click to and go to primary text buttons. And under that, you can see how our naming fell through. We have default primary text button, alternate primary text button with leading icon. And then as much as we can, that is consistent across all of the libraries, and you can change the code library here to Flutter, React, Styles, and CSS. We have a usage tab that has all of the best practices, same language talking about it, and an accessibility tab about what your best practices are for providing ARIA labels, the type, any keyboard controls you have, and currently internal only links to our VGAR documentation. So that's on every component that we have in one singular place. So.
Is it accessible?
Do you think Visa would let us make this public if it wasn't accessible? Yes, it is accessible. The system didn't just launch, our team did. We came together, we operate at a different level now, and I liken it to cleaning out a junk drawer. You can't organize a junk drawer until you throw everything on the floor and look at it and just be like, okay, I think that goes with that. Like, again, back to the conspiracy theorists thing. You got strings tied to everywhere. You're like, I think this is this and this is this. But because we did that and we cleaned out that junk drawer, we now have the tracks laid out, the bridge being built to do this consistently and faster. So we learned lessons so that you don't have to. And so in this one, we're going to have a lesson. It's just a very short slide, and then we're going to pass it to each one of the team members to talk about an anecdote or how this related to their avenue. So we'll start with build trust before you build components. This goes back to, we changed the way we designed. We worked on function first. We sat with content. We said, okay, we're building a filter pattern. That's what I'm working on now. It's top of mind. Okay, we're dividing it by layout. Okay, so there's like horizontal filters, and then there's like a vertical column of filters. Like, you can like list them like that. Okay, does that make sense? How are people already using it? And then working through that and building out like the function of it so that we can explain it before we even know what it looks like. That way, when I go meet with Imran, I already have ideas of where there can be accessibility pitfalls because I'm thinking about the function before I'm thinking about what it looks like. And so that, to me, has fundamentally changed the way that I work. And I consider all of those things before it. And it has led to some of the most successful kickoffs we've had recently, where on my little alignment chart, everyone is like either left of kind of or right of kind of. Everyone's on the agree side. And so that, for me, that trust building has like led to so much more efficiencies and less going back to the drawing board and trying to like refigure out where I missed the mark last time. Imran?
Yes. Building trust also comes with, not sounding as impediment or hindrance. And that is what accessibility is and will be and should be when you're working with different functions, design, content, engineering. That way you can build that trust. For example, there's one of the different functions, one of the slides that shared 4 different functions were in 4 different shapes, and I don't know if that was intentional. All the circles, when they came together, they all became circles. And previously, when we were separate, accessibility was in a circle. So I think it communicates that everyone is thinking about accessibility, right? So design is thinking about accessibility. Content is thinking about accessibility. Engineering is already implementing accessibility. So that makes our job easier. That makes our job easier in the sense where we can move faster, we can be efficient, and be robust in the sense where we provide components that are inclusive, that are accessible, that are design heavy, and they are also content reviewed as well. So I think that's what helped us to build that trust and of course move forward.
And I'm going to give us a time check. We're going to probably cruise through these pretty quickly.
Ready? Mine is just talk to people and understand where they're coming from, empathize with them, because I have to kind of go across many teams to really translate. Like you saw, there's accessibility guidance. Our team reviews all of that and we help co-create it. So really talk to everyone and really understand where they're coming from. I think Srini mentioned that earlier, so that you can build that trust. And a lot of the times trust is built through work. So even working with Imran, we really built great relationships. I built great relationships with our CSS engineer, Sam. He is like one of my ride or dies now. We've all been through the trenches together. So really lean into that and really get to know each other.
Oh, yeah, you good. I think time check.
Yep.
Yeah,
Cruising. Documentation should feel like a conversation. Yes, like we said, we co-create, we talk about everything up front together, and really make sure that we have a shared vision of what everything will be. And that a lot of that comes down to me as well, to like fall back on those conversations and make sure that I'm documenting those conversations as well. Decision logs, change logs, and then also like really clear to-dos and next steps for everything. So documentation goes outside of usage guidance, outside of the code, everything. Documenting the things that you talk about is really important as well. Clarity isn't a luxury; it's a kindness. This is actually like one of my catchphrases of many. Someone told me this a long time ago, and it really stuck with me. Just like the "Say It Straight, Say It Great." It's actually from a book called "Hey Whipple Squeeze This," advertising book. But it's not a luxury. Like a lot of times, people think they're being clear, but they might not maybe see how someone else might be interpreting that on their side from their context. So really, just try to understand where the person is coming from and understand, that you might need to break things down in a different way to help them learn or understand what you're trying to convey.
I do have a note on this. Again, as someone who's neurodivergent, nothing stresses me out more than an empty meeting invite with like no notes in it. I'm sure everyone can relate to that. You're like, what is expected of me? What's going to happen here? Because I have been in meetings where I got no meeting invite and was expected to present, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. So when I send out a meeting, as an example of this, when I send out a meeting invite, I say, hey everyone, here's what our goal is. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's the agenda, including who is responsible for what, even if it's just me as the host talking through it. So everyone knows, cool, I don't have to be prepared. And then the most important one, meeting prep. And I highlight this at the bottom. And even if it's nothing, because how great is that to get an email that says you don't have to do anything in a meeting? Oh man. Or if it's like, I want to review someone, take 5 minutes to review this documentation just so that you're primed and you're ready to go. That kind of clarity, I try to think, I want to put information in a way that I would want to consume it. And in that, it's just like over-explaining, sometimes maybe not necessary, but if someone reads that and is just like, oh, thank God, I know what I need to do, then I've done my job.
It's accessible for everyone, everywhere.
Yes. Okay, what you can do now. So if you don't have a design system, how do you bridge the gap? Start small, pick an area on your team like documentation, labels, or color use, and bring teams together to align on it. Use retros to reflect. Create a space to talk about what's working and what's not when it comes to accessibility and collaboration. Digital whiteboarding is great, especially if you have a team that's remote or split. Invite everyone in, bring accessibility, content, design, and engineering to the same conversation early and often. I'm also going to throw in there research. If you have research, bring them in. If you have ops, strategy, bring them in. The more the merrier. Revisit language and labels. Ask if your terminology supports clarity and inclusion for everybody. And find your champions. Look for the allies across across roles who care about inclusion and consistency and co-create standards together. And if you do have a system, here's what you can do now. Use it as a bridge. Bring accessibility, design, content, and engineering together through shared tokens, patterns, and docs. The language is so important to be speaking the same language. Audit your guidance. Ask, does this reflect the way we really work? Does it help teams build accessible, inclusive experiences? And build in feedback. Make it very easy for people to raise issues or suggest improvements, especially from accessibility lens. Again, providing avenues for everyone to provide feedback in the way that makes them feel the most psychologically safe is always a big, big win. And clarify definitions, right? Align on terms like error, disabled, or focus to prevent misinterpretation. And always champion that shared language. Using that consistent terminology, when you set on it, use it. Commit to it. It's okay, everyone slips up, but like really try to commit to using the same language, because that's where you foster that trust that like, I know that this is called this because Srini told me that developers call this, so I'm calling it that. So these are resources, again, in the slides that will be shared with you. These will be links that you can access. It is our product design system website, also the FAQs. We also have a link to our Figma community page where you can download our Figma design kit and use it. You can download our icons file and use it. And then there's also a blog post about our announcement about VPDS. Thank you so much. I know it's the last day. I know it was 8:30 in the morning, but I really appreciate the turnout. We all do. And if there are any other questions, please let us know.
I apologize. I came in late because as you said, 8:30 in the morning. Did you talk about your chart components?
We did.
Please do.
So part of our system is also an accessible charts library for using bar charts, scatter point plots, pie charts. Yeah. They're like a sister team to us. They are under the umbrella of the Visa Product Design System, but they are also another team of ours. And I work with the designer, Lila, all the time about how we create components in Figma that live together, that cohabitate together. One pattern that we're looking towards in the future is a dashboard where it's combining like the components of like navigation and all of that with chart components in a dashboard. So we are sister products. We share a level up in Chris Martini, and they're not here today, sadly, but. It is. If it's on the site, it's public.
Yeah.
Their Figma library, they're working on the Figma library. It's not public yet. Well, I can say it's not, but you can't find it, so it's fine. But we're working on that aspect too. So the charts components, I believe they're also working on a cool plugin that you can put like actual data in, and it'll spit out a chart for you. Because like for some reason people want I want an accurate chart in this prototype, and you're like, okay, I guess. So yes, thank you. Visa Charts components is part of this, and you can find it on the design system site. And then you have a question back there. Thank you.
And I can attest, that's why I do successful data visualizations, and I can attest that they are.
I wanted to ask you about your reward system. So in academia, we're encouraged to collaborate across units, but there's no reward for doing so. The reward system is entirely siloed. You get promoted if you publish in your home journals, and that's it. And you have achieved so much, but how have you been rewarded for it?
I don't know. Maybe we'll share this recording with our SVP and put it to him. No. We have like an internal thing called Uplift, where every month you get 100 points, or depending on your role, you get a certain number of points, and it's encouraged to give them cross-functional to other team members to say, you know what, Brandy knocked it out of the park. She has a 6-hour call with me for this presentation, and she didn't complain about it once. Maybe once. But if you find that like this person went out of their way to just do that, you give them, and then there's like a catalog of stuff that you can buy from that. So we do that to give shout outs, especially, and I think it's like a really democratic way, because even associate level folks have points to give out. So and then maybe if someone does like a huge project, like a VP or SVP will like drop 1,000 points in their like account or something. Like they knocked it out of the park. Right now we're still in like, we just went public, and we're like, we thought we'd be in the like, yeah, we're done. Take a big breath. And then we're realizing it's like, no, back to the maintenance, back to the everything else. So I'm sure we'll have some kind of reward at some point.
Well, and they also like Visa is really good about publicly recognizing like all of the team members and cross-functionally as well, which I think is something that at first kind of took a little bit for everyone to kind of get there in terms of like how truly cross-functional our team is. And I think we all advocate for each other. I know like Sharini will advocate for, I mean, they advocated for me to even be a part of this panel, to come and speak with y'all. So we all, as much as we can, advocate for each other, raise hands, and make sure that we're all included. And we also publicly recognize each other, whether that's on Teams, tagging each other, shouting out people that are no longer a part of our team that maybe moved off onto like a different product, making sure that they get recognition for laying the foundation for things like our site. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it's a great question. So I think, the academia to corporate enterprise, I think there's a little bit of a mapping you may have to do on how to apply this over there. There's a few types of recognition, right? Like one is on the team itself. We know the value has a lot of impact, meaning we can see it in like lots of products, both in-house and outside. So we see it kind of everywhere. That is very dry, that is motivating for us to see. The best thing so we're all creators at the end of the day, right? Like the best thing for us is to see the creations out there, and we're adding value and impact. And especially when it's a design system, it's like it has that ripple effect, it's upstream, it radiates. Like if a product has to double check their work, we have to triple check their work because we are like upstream, and it's a little more meta. So we have to think about how the creators are making that product. So that has a lot of intrinsic motivation for us. Obviously, Visa has a good rewards program. You should always hire, and we're always hiring. So that is there. But for other developers or designers who contribute to the system, right? Like for developers, it's really good for the performance review when they can tell their manager that, oh, I did my product, but I also did something else that has a broader, deeper, longer effect, right? So one of the questions is, did you go beyond your daily tasks? Yes, I did. Look, I contributed to the design system, which is like, across all Visa's products and portfolios. And same for the designers, right? When you're able to contribute back, and it's one is you did something beyond what was prescribed. It is well recognized, and the whole camaraderie you will receive from our team. It's trust. I think the one word that wasn't there was like, because it's a little squishy, but it's love, right? You got to love your work. You got to love your fellow human being. If everything is like, if you tune into your positive channel, that's another book. It's a classic one. It's a good read. It's called The Magic of Thinking Big. Right, there's one phrase that stuck with me. It's like tune into your positive channel, right? And I think that's a great way. And right now, our leaders, we talk about positive intent. So if you tune into that, I think it just radiates from there.
Actually, I don't work at Visa anymore. I left a little under 3 years ago. But another thing I wanted to add to your question, and tell me if this has changed. But at end of year performance reviews. Years ago, Visa used to just kind of, did you meet your goals? You know, the typical thing. They changed it so there's 2 reviews. They're 50-50. Did you do it? What did you do? Your goals, the business value, but also how did you do it? And so as they're talking here, they accomplished a lot of business value, but they did it in a way through collaboration and respect and trust. And so that is going to be reflected in a 50-50 evaluation at the end of the year, the how they did it and how they accomplished it. So I think that talks a little bit to your question about, you know, rewards there. And then I had a really quick question. I don't know, the VGAR, is that deprecated because of this, or are you guys maintaining that separately?
Yeah. Short answer, no.
Awesome.
The goal is to have one source of VGAR, but we do not have this as of today. We have a public version of VGAR. It's developer.visa.com/pages/accessibility. I'm gonna.
Just Google VGAR, VGAR.
If you can just Google VGAR, our developer pages comes up. So this is what we have as public version. I may say that the internal version we have is a little bit more updated than what we have publicly available. We are looking to have a one source of truth or one source of VGAR in the foreseeable future soon.
So the peanut butter chocolate cookie is still strong, is stronger than ever and more flavorful than ever. So there's a lot of plans that, and Mike and I we're tied at the hip, and Brandon, we have plans, and we are the only, only thing I can share is it's going to be more and more surfaced and more consolidated. And it's going to be elevated similar to what you see. That's all I can say.
Yeah, quick question, and I've got a bunch of other questions. How can I contact you guys?
I guess, what's the email? Where's your email?
So it's on
On the site.
The formal answer.
Yes.
It's the support page. So it's right on the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
I got this.
I didn't design the site, but I know.
We have
Yep. Product design system at visa.com.
And I look at the
course.
inbox every day, so.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. I don't know, are there any questions on the Zoom?
There have not been.
Okay, perfect. I know we're over time. Thank you, everyone, for your time this morning, for coming out. We appreciate it. And a shout out to our other Visa employees who came here to. Thank you all.
Work for Visa.
Yeah, I want to thank the speakers and everyone for attending this session. We have an end of session survey which I would request everyone to fill out, possible. Thank you.